Okay, good afternoon, class. For those of you who don't know me very well, my name is Goodman. I'm from Orem, Utah, and I am a senior here at BYU, Hawaii. I'm a psychology major, just like Catherine is. And today I'll be talking a little bit about the importance of being an inviting teacher and creating an inviting classroom, and why that's important for the students. So I'm going to start out with this quote just so that we can kind of get an idea of why this is important. Can somebody read this for me, please? First.
The effective teacher is deliberately inviting. We all like to be invited to go shopping, to attend a party, to join a group. Most of us have the common courtesy to greet people at the door, exchange pleasantries when introduced to others, and offer food or drink to a visitor. These are all obvious, expected, and practiced. These same concepts should be practiced in the classroom at all grade levels.
Thank you. I like this quote a lot because I think it's definitely true that we all like to feel invited, even if you're a young child or if you're an adult, and it's something that you have to make a conscious effort to do in your classroom. So to start out, I'm just going to give you a card and have you write on it one or two ideas or things that you think an inviting teacher has or does, if that makes sense. So go ahead and just take one and pass it down. So just write down what an inviting teacher is to you. Or if you have an example of a teacher that you've had in the past, you can write down what they did that made you feel more invited, I guess. Alright, does anybody want to share what they think, what their idea is of an inviting teacher, or what you wrote down in your card? Jasmine?
I said that in my teacher, I also be smiling, and they had an inviting classroom. Like it's cool. So like there was in my senior year, this teacher who was like always smiling, super bubbly, and she taught like Chinese, Mandarin Chinese, but her classroom was like the most inviting classroom. Like you could just walk by, you wanted to be in there. And so even though I was taking Japanese, I just switched to Chinese so I could take that.
Really?
And then you know that they care about you and they always have an open door to help.
I like that a lot. I was reminded a lot of, the smiling thing reminded me of Nana's lesson last time. As I was kind of getting ready for this, I was thinking about the things that she said about smiling, saying please and thank you, knowing the class, your students' names. I think that definitely is important to create an inviting environment. Anybody else?
Like, I actually wrote the exact same thing as Jasmine. I think number one is when you smile, because it makes you feel really good, and then you feel comfortable in their classroom. I also had a teacher, and all the students wanted to eat lunch in his classroom during the break, because it's just like he's so nice and easy to talk to, and you just like want to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that it's something important to think about with this is kind of the higher purpose of teaching, right? And we talked about that last time as well, that the purpose of our teaching is to help the students. And so we need to have an inviting classroom so that they'll want to be there, they'll want to listen, they'll feel comfortable, because they'll learn better, they'll learn more, and they'll be more successful if they do feel comfortable in that environment. Any other thoughts? Okay, so like Jasmine was saying, a good teacher can create an inviting classroom. So I just wanted to take a second to kind of talk about this classroom and look around And maybe we can just highlight a few things that either make you feel invited or not invited. And you can just kind of shout it out. Is there anything that stands out to you guys?
Like the flowers.
The flowers, that's a good thing.
Not as freezing today.
Yes, I like that personally.
Freezing?
No, it is not.
Oh,
Freezing,
okay.
I like it.
Yeah, that's good.
The door's open, that's one thing. Maybe that could be more inviting.
And it's also really small, so you can't really get lost in this classroom.
Is there anything that you don't think is very inviting about this classroom or that could be improved?
Kind of bare. And
Yeah.
the walls,
Kind of
just
boring.
white and,
There's nothing up on the walls from the students or from teachers or anybody really. It's kind of messy.
Yeah. Yeah, weird.
Yeah. Sometimes there's good clutter in classrooms, like there's classrooms just filled with things that you can work with and that's a good thing, but if it's just like messy clutter, then it's not very inviting. Was there anything else? Any other thoughts? Alright, so we'll move on. Kind of the idea behind this, or I guess the objective, is that you can be thinking about throughout this class, throughout this lesson, is we want to try and identify 2 or 3 things that you can do specifically, something specific you can do personally to be more inviting. Or, I guess we don't have classrooms yet, so we're going to focus more on just personality and your teaching style. And also just to understand a little bit more about the importance of being inviting and creating an inviting environment. So we'll move on to the next part. This quote is one that I found that I really liked. Is there somebody that can read this group?
Well,
Thanks, God.
success is easy. Pay attention to the students. Like a detective, listen to what they have to say.
I really like this. There's quite a few pages of information about this teacher, Teresa Borges, who teaches in Miami. And this is just one of the things she said. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the things she has done in her classroom and with her students to make them feel more invited. But why do you guys think it's important to listen? Why is that inviting for a student? A lot of the time we're talking and teaching and things like that, but does she highlight listening?
well, that's actually something that I wrote on my note card, is that the teacher needs to appreciate students' comments, because if the students don't feel like they're like involved in the class, like they won't see a purpose of why they have to be there, because the teacher's just talking to them. So if they feel like their input is like appreciated, that makes them feel better about themselves.
Yeah, definitely. Anybody else? Any thoughts about listening?
I think listening is very important because you can't tell if your student understand what you're teaching. If you don't listen, some of the feedbacks they bring or the question they bring to you, you just ignore it and go. So it's very important to listen.
Yeah, it reminds me of kind of the analogy of like a phone call that we talk about, like when we relate it to other things as well, but if you're just talking and talking and talking and hang up the phone, it's not a conversation. You know what I mean? It doesn't do any good. So you have to take the time to talk, and then you also have to listen, so you can see what they think. And then I just wanted to show this short video that's kind of an example of bad listening. Let's see if we can. It's not too loud.
It is crucial that you listen, Dwight. Also, you want to respect their...
So hit FN and like one of the ones, I never know which one it is. F8.
How does you duplicate?
And then you hit it into,
One of these?
yeah,
Duplicate?
do that one, yeah.
There you go.
Are you listening now?
Yes,
Okay, well, you have to show us.
that's impossible. Listening happens in the ear and in the brain. I mean, some organisms have external hairs that vibrate to indicate auditory stimulation, but unfortunately, our external hairs don't vibrate at all.
Huh. Uh-huh.
What are you doing?
A little smile and a nod shows that I hear you. Got it?
Kind of.
Melon, why don't you tell Dwight what we were doing earlier today, and Dwight, you show us that you're listening.
Well, we were in the warehouse where we were discussing the mural that I commissioned Pam to paint there. We were talking about the colour schemes and the major themes we want to hit. Children of the world coming together, cutting down trees to make paper, but not in a child labouring way.
It's just up and down. Just a regular nod, like a person.
I am a person.
Of
Yes.
course, you're a person. We can do this, all right? And then we thought I can't carry on with that face. Look at it, I'm going to get nightmares with that face. I mean, he looks like he is labouring over a stool, having just eaten human flesh.
Keep it extreme.
No, I'm sorry, but that is true.
He's screwed. The meeting's in less than an hour.
Okay, let's see. There we go. So what do you guys think about that video? What does it teach us about listening? Sounds like that's kind of funny.
Our body language also matters.
Yeah. If you just stare at them with a blank stare, it doesn't really show you're listening. My brothers aren't very good at this, my little brothers. And half the time when I'm talking to them, I'm like, I'm talking to a brick wall right now. Like they just like are staring or they don't respond. And I'm like, are you listening? I ask them that all the time and they're like, yes. And I'm like, well, say something back. So I think it's important for students as well that if you don't show them you're listening, they're not going to know. You know what I mean? They're not going to feel like you're listening. They can see you staring at them, but they're not going to think you're actually caring about what they say. So I thought that was a good example of, it takes a conscious effort for some people more than others to practice being a good listener. Okay, so let's go down and talk about a few ways that we can be more inviting as teachers. And I love these examples that were given by Teresa Borges. So maybe we can just go around in a row and read these bullets and just think about which ones you like or what you think about each one. Maybe we can just start with Jasmine. Is that okay?
I noticed and compliment a new haircut, a new shirt, and especially a right answer.
I miss my handwriting for original work, about my lunchtime to home.
I never get a second request from a parent or a contact or phone call.
I visit students in the hospital, go to funerals, and make awards for students who achieve perfect scores on tests.
I put stickers on perfect papers, even in algebra 2.
Art. I read about our athletes in the paper and go to the games that I can attend.
I know what video games they like and the things you can run on MySpace.
Of course, knowing your curriculum is better, but knowing your student takes time and needs to success.
Thank you. Is there any of these that stick out to you that you like the most, or maybe have you had a teacher that's been like this? Jasmine?
Wait, can you explain that? I never get a second request from a parent for contact or phone call.
So I think that meaning if they say that they want to talk to her, she
Oh,
never
sure.
waits for them to ask again. She just calls them immediately and makes that contact. Kathy?
I had a teacher that, the same one that people wanted to eat lunch in his classroom. Like I requested to be his TA, or he asked me to be his TA, like I knew him really well, and he follows up with his students. Like I've been out of high school for a long time now, and like we still keep in contact so much that like I invited him to my wedding, and like, or he's like, hey, how's university going, or just like he was one of those teachers that like kept up with like extracurricular activities that the students were in, or like things they're interested in. So that really helps.
Yeah, definitely. It's the whole, I like the quote that Jasmine showed last time that about like anybody can make a buck, but it's a lot harder to make a difference. Is that was something to that effect? That like these kind of teachers that go the extra mile that try to really be inviting, they're not just there for money. They're there because they care about the students and they care about them past when they're teaching them. And I think that's a really important thing. Is there any others that stuck out to you guys? No?
The second one, I analyze handwriting for original work. I offer lunchtime to them. I remember when I was in the intermediate, my teacher was telling us to use printing instead of handwriting. And it was really hard at first. Even lunchtime, he stand there and let us practice all the time.
Yeah.
And when I come into high school, it was more easier. So I get used to it, like printing instead of handwriting. Now, to be honest, I have bad handwriting. But coming to printing, more like my siblings and my cousin, their wedding invitation, I'm the one they picked for me to write down because they said I had a nice handwriting, and I said, printing? I don't think so. But to be honest, it's more like you prove that it's your own thing that you write down. Instead, nowadays we go with the technology, but handwriting is more like keeping the
They're paying more attention to detail to help the student. I like that. And I like the quote at the end that it's more important to know your students. You can know the material, that's also important, but I guess it's just equally as important to know your students, because it makes a big difference. Okay, so these are just, as we wrap up, some different, there's verbal, behavioral, positive self-talk. There's different kinds of things you can do to be invitational or disinvitational. So these are just some phrases that were given, examples of things that are invitational versus disinvitational. So good morning, congratulations, tell me about it, thank you. These are all things you can say to them that are invitational. And then there's the opposite. It won't work. I don't care what you do. You can't do that. Other things we've talked about is smile, listen to them, give them a thumbs up, high five, things like that. Another one, look at your watch, shoving, sneering. Then this is more about the environment. So if it's clean, if it's comfortable, if the furniture is, or comfortable furniture, and then the other opposite end is dark, smelly, beat up furniture. And then this is the examples of positive self-talk, and I really like this part. So it says making mistakes is all right, or I could learn to do that. These are things that the teacher says, not even just about a student, but about themselves. Why am I so stupid? I could never do that. Why do you think this positive self-talk is important to do as a teacher? Have you had any examples of teachers that are good at this or aren't good at this?
So teachers aren't perfect and they make mistakes too. So like the main thing, so in math, this is kind of stressed like now, is that math teachers, they like never make a mistake on the board, you know? And so then students try to, like if they make a mistake, like students might think that, oh, they don't know what they're doing or whatever, but they said it's actually good to make mistakes on the board and then correct it. So that it actually also shows that like it's okay to make mistakes. Like math is something that you learn. It's not like you're born being good at.
Yeah.
So like even if a teacher makes a mistake on the board and they could make it on purpose and just be like, oh, you know what, that, you know, like they correct themselves or let the student know that it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's very important. And the way they react to it. If they do make a mistake on accident, I'm sure they know how to do it because they're smart. They've practiced it forever. But yeah, the way they react to it I think is important. It shows students like, oh, thanks for correcting that. Like, it's okay. And then they learn and fix it together. And I think it teaches the students that, like you said, they're not going to be born with all of this knowledge and they're not going to be born with all of this experience. And so I think it's important for inviting teachers to help them know that it's a process. It's a process of kind of error and then fixing it. And just in closing, this kind of goes along with positivity and how the positive self-talk and how positivity is just very important in order to be invited. Because all the things we've talked about are all positive things. And I think that's something that we can always fix. At least some little thing in our life we can try and be a little more positive, especially with teaching. So this is just a short clip that shows why it's important to be positive. Is it going to do the same thing where I have to?
Yeah.
What do I gotta do to make you love me?
This is a commercial.
What do I gotta do to make you care? It's sad, so sad.
Hit it again.
Why can't we talk it over?
Do this again.
Yeah, like hit it multiple times. The other one.
It's over in the
Yeah.
city,
And then keep like against it. duplicate the screen?
That's that one, right? Okay, there we go. Have you guys seen this?
Yeah, I think it's
Now my whole house is great. I can do anything good. I like my school. I like anything. I like my dad. I like my cousins. I like my aunts. I like my Allisons. I like my mom. I like my sisters. I like my dad. I like my hair. I like my haircuts. I like my pajamas. I like my stuff. I like my rooms. I like my whole house. My whole house is great. I can do anything good. Yeah. I can do anything good. Better than anyone. Better than anyone.
Does anybody have any comments about that video? Anything that you think we can apply as teachers, maybe? For positivity?
I think that I have this one friend that's kind of like negative, and like she like beats herself up a lot, and then also is just kind of like negative about a lot of situations, and it makes it hard to like be around her, and like it depresses you as well. And so I think that if you're positive, it'll help like your students be more positive, it won't bring them down, and it'll make them think that they can do it too. So.
Yeah, definitely. I love this video of this little girl because I think it's, especially comparing it to teaching, I think it's important that we try and have that attitude as teachers or as future teachers, and that we try and instill that in the children, that they feel like they can do anything. And one example that just in closing of this was my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Taney. She taught all of my siblings at one point or another. And she taught my little brother Nate, who always has been kind of like a little troublemaker. He didn't really ever like school growing up, but he loved Mrs. Taney because she was the happiest, smiliest, most positive teacher that I think was at that elementary school. And I think our whole family loved Miss Taney for what she did, not only for all of us, but especially for my brother Nate. And she kind of gave him the nickname Nate the Great. And she'd always call him that, even though he struggled with his assignments or he didn't like it or he was kind of a punk sometimes in class. She just loved him and she just wanted to help him. And I think she was a really good example to me of how you should treat all of your students. The ones that maybe have a harder time with school or with sitting in class all day, or they're not maybe quite as smart as some of the other students. They should be treated just the same. When they feel invited, then they will enjoy learning more, even if it's hard for them. And so just in closing, I would like you to each write 1 or 2 things on the back of your card of something you can specifically do to be more inviting, whether it's just in your personal life or if you have any other teaching assignments or a classroom or anything like that, like what can you do specifically to improve? And does anybody else have any other questions? Any other thoughts? All right, that's all for today.